today's video, I speak to Robyn Bailey. Robyn is an ambassador for Diversita, where she serves as a specialist advisor for Diversita Connect. She plays a key role in shaping the platform to ensure it effectively supports neurodivergent individuals and inclusive employers. Currently working as an employment advisor within NHS Talking Therapies, Robyn specialises in ADHD awareness, coaching and social inclusion. She is highly trained in crisis support and recovery, holding certifications in both ASIST, suicide intervention and realising recovery, ensuring her work is grounded in empathy, understanding and safety. Robyn is also ADHD and Dyslexic. We speak about her conditions, her role as an ambassador for Diversita, her job as an employment advisor, and what employers need to be doing to support neurodivergent people. Hey guys, and welcome to episode 2 of the Autism Connection Series 7, and as you can see by the intro, today is a guest who I am also an ambassador with for Diversita, Robyn Bailey. So Robyn, thank you for joining us on the Autism Connection Series 7. Can't believe it's been 7 years. Started it during lockdown and sort of returning to its roots this year because it's sort of online. So really looking forward to interviewing people and everything else. But I always start with my first question, which is, what is your connection to autism?
I have friends who have a diagnosis or a peer-reviewed kind of diagnosis as well, and I work in a service that supports a range of people which have included those with autism as well.
And I always invite a very sort of, I've had people on the show, who aren't autistic, people that I've worked with, people that I just know. I've had people up in government who, have to make big decisions. So the reason I wanted to have you on as well is because obviously a lot of people, the sort of work that you do, I think is so valuable for people who are neurodiverse. So, the work that you do with Diversita as an ambassador, which I'm also an ambassador for. Cheap plug to Mark there. But also the work that you do with talking therapies, and ADHD. So, what sort of made you go into that field, and what sort of things do you have to do in terms of that work?
So I've been working as a employment advisor under NHS Talking Therapies for 4 years now, and it came out of myself being a service user. I was taking on employment support myself, and it had all essentially come down to the pandemic. Came at a time when I just graduated with my master's in curation, and the industry that was difficult to get into then got even tougher, and I was trying to figure out what my next steps and my path was, what were my transferable skills. And the advisor and myself recognized that the role of employment advisor had lots of what I essentially had already, the skill set and things that I could that I lacked, I could learn. And wonderfully, I passed interview, and here I am 4 years later in the most, I want to say, touch with stable job I've had, but the first job I've been able to maintain as someone who is part of the neurodivergence or neurodiversity community. And what we do is we empower and coach and support people with mild to moderate mental health struggles. And I have to say there is a big common intersection where there are a lot of people who have um, autism, ADHD, um, dyslexia, and there are a lot of neurodivergence, and lots of these particular struggles seem to lead to a lot of anxiety and depression, and they seem to mostly then end up on my caseload, who need support maybe more than once over the course of however many years.
Yeah, I mean, especially around autism. I think the stat around autism is 7 times more likely to feel lonely. And we know that, loneliness can then lead towards those mental health, those depressive sort of states. Um, and it's tricky because there's a lot of people who are autistic that then can end up being sectioned, and we know that's not the right place for them either because it's under, the Mental Health Act, which causes a lot of range of other difficulties
Yeah.
and everything else. But you obviously mentioned you're sort of part of the neurodiverse sort of community as well. So, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, how did that come about with you and diagnosis and, what is your sort of neurodiversity as well?
Mm. I'm happy with answering. It all begun with doing. I took on some free counselling when I was doing my. I believe I can't remember if it was my BA or my MA. I think it must have been my master's, and it was near the end, and I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and that really spooked me because I had no idea. I thought I was going in for just going to get the dyscalculia diagnosis, which is, as some people may or may not know, is essentially like dyslexia for numbers, where they can switch round and it
Where
be
I've
like a
got that.
really inconvenient magic trick that isn't fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I came out with dyslexia as well, and I was very confused. It was not something that was ever picked up, and it was very emotional. I felt a lot of grief and a lot of uh, lost opportunities over the years to actually get the support that I so clearly needed. Like, it was not a secret that there was a lot of problems over the years with confidence and anxiety and being behind, and that's even with all the effort that I put in. So it was like A star for effort, but you
Mm.
failed this or that. But that led on to the dyslexia diagnosis, led on to, well, there might be something else in the background that could explain various other things that I had been struggling with to maintain work and previous education. And that's when the diagnosis came in the form of the right to choose um, pathway. And it was relatively quick in comparison to the NHS waiting list. And it just helped to, I don't see this having any layers of excuse when it comes to the struggles or the things that haven't gone quite right in the past. It helps to explain why it was more likely to happen.
Yeah, I get it. It's not an excuse, but it's a
Mm.
reason. There's nothing, I always say in my speeches, there's nothing worse for anyone to be sat there thinking, like, why am I so, in our own thoughts, we think, why am I so stupid? Or
Mm-hmm.
why am I not getting it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when someone tells you, well, actually, no, you've got a cognitive reason as to why
Mm-hmm.
that is happening,
Yeah.
it starts, making sense. It's a bit like if
Mm-hmm.
if you had no energy all the time, you would
Mm-hmm.
think, well, I'm lazy, or you'd think,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd beat yourself up over it. But actually, when you find out that, you've got this condition that's making you feel tired all the time.
Mhm.
Again, you don't use it as an excuse, but at least
Mhm.
it's a reason and an explanation as to why. Oh, okay, I've not just been not doing anything for the sake of it. There's been a
Yeah,
reason. That's
yeah.
huge relief.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can. I've made various mistakes over the years in the workplace, and I've never known how to explain them or ask for the right support, or you do feel like you're going a bit nutty. Like you can't explain why a number is switched round, despite how many times you've checked it. You can't explain how the one process you were learning over the course of 3 weeks you still haven't picked up,
Mm.
and it has really made me scared over the years that I've been seen as not caring or incompetent, and it's I wish I knew now back then
Yeah.
to help me understand what I should do in the way of some decision making and getting the right support. But now I try and use this lived experience as a way to help people see a way through when they've had their struggles. I can't change what's happened. I have to try and find a way to make it mean something more in the long run. Or again, I think I might get too caught up in what ifs and maybes.
And what do you think, growing up through this education, everything else, why do you sort of think that that was missed? Do you think it was just not enough understanding of it? Because, I mean, when I got diagnosed, we didn't, but when I got diagnosed, I think it was probably around 2003, maybe
Mhm.
2004. But, we didn't have the Autism Act or we didn't have the Equality Act. And I just think, you was just deemed as a naughty child, or you was just deemed as, sort of, you know, uh, not the sharpest tool in the box, so to speak. So,
Mhm.
yeah, what do you think it was that, or do you think it was something else?
I think it's I think it's because maybe I didn't present in the way that one would expect um, ADHD to present, because from my understanding is that girls and women display ADHD symptoms differently, and it can go it can easily be missed, even now, but even more so back when I was in primary school, secondary school. It just wasn't really. I had no idea we weren't taught about it. I don't think we were taught about it. The most awareness I think we had growing up was there was a thing called dyslexia, and some people, I don't know, it's just some people got caught out on it and others didn't. It was just, in fact, when I mentioned to someone how I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and they were saying, "Oh, it wasn't really about when I was when they were younger. People were just seen as slow," and I just thought,
Mm.
well, that's exactly how I've been seen as, is slow. It was seen as something else, which is so concerning for how I feel like I have been perceived in the past, despite all the efforts.
I think you've done more than enough to sort of, if we're going to use the analogy of slow, I think you've well and truly caught up.
Well, that's the thing, is that being a late bloomer is not a bad thing, but it can feel like such a bad thing when you're going through it. Um, it's like with employment, is I am clearly capable of doing actually a pretty difficult job. It just had to be in the right setting for it to click. But the memory and numbers are still a little bit not as fantastic, because ADHD doesn't necessarily just disappear when it comes to going into a different job, but it certainly is less. It's much more manageable and less visible now that I'm doing something that is uh, a lot more like a puzzle piece. I'm no longer the, what do they say, the square peg in a round hole kind of thing.
With your job currently, so you obviously do the NHS Talking Therapies as well, and with employment advising, is that advising the employers about how to be maybe more supportive or maybe more accommodated, or is that also advising people who are going out to work? How does that sort of work?
So I am essentially hired as an employment advisor for clients that go through NHS Talking Therapies, and I help those clients who are allocated to my caseload to find, remain, or return to work. And sometimes that will also mean that I am allowed, with some permission on behalf of the organisation and the client, that I can go to a workplace meeting and offer some wellbeing support in a supportive meeting, and allow and help a person advocate for what they need. So beforehand, we'd go over what they want to say. We'd have notes ready to go as well in case I need to take over. I'm never there to tell them what to do or to speak for them, but sometimes the things that we talk about can be quite emotional. So as long as there's some notes there for me to read off of, that's how those supportive wellbeing sessions can go. But it's very much empowering the person to handle the situation themselves. If they need me to attend them and I'm allowed to attend any workplace meetings, I certainly can. But sometimes the empowerment, it allows them to do it all for themselves. So recently, a person has found our sessions so helpful that they've passed on our employment support flyer across their organisation, and it's getting more embedded into their workplace culture that there is support there for them externally. And I think it's going to hopefully boost not just this client, but everyone that they come into contact with, and even through now their HR person that started, it can now be distributed in a much more broader sense, that there is support and that a person within their organisation has been able to self-advocate to the point that it's going to impact a team quite broadly.
That's amazing, though, that's empowering that individual, and I speak sort of from lived experience. I think sometimes that's where I've had issues with employment, because I do self-advocate and I do stick up for myself when I see things that I'm not comfortable with, or if I feel something's unfair. The sort of autism justice in me sort of needs to say something. And I think some employers that I've had have seen that as, even though it has strengthened the organisation and put them in a better situation for the change that I've tried to enforce or tried to do, they haven't quite recognised it, maybe see me as a thorn in the side or a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's them not worked out because of that. Um, so it is leading to the sort of question of, when you have an individual and you're trying to get them into work, and maybe that employer knows about yourself or talking therapies, is there a stigma there from certain employers that sort of go on, oh, no, we don't want that, that's going to be too much problem? I mean, they'd never admit it, but have you had those experiences? And have you also had experience where people begin to self-advocate and then you see a shift of behaviour with those employers?
It's kind of varied, and I don't think I've really seen anything. It's almost strategically done, so a way of not really admitting it, but finding workarounds to discrimination of sorts. I'm pretty. It was a situation where a client was offered a job and signed the contract, and they had then felt able to disclose, and somehow that job fell through. And it, between both of us, there was that uneasiness of, was that the reason?
Mm.
You don't have to disclose if you don't feel if you feel you're going to be discriminated against, you don't have to, or even if you just didn't want to, you don't have to. And we were aware of that, and there are ways of trying to disclose when comfortable, and that was when they were comfortable.
And it sort of got thrown back in their face for it, or it seemed that way.
It's really difficult because much of the time it is an assumption when these things happen. From my experiences with this, it's not been blatant language. It's kind of been the actions have spoken louder than words in a lot of these situations. And a lot of people are very, very worried and anxious about disclosing anything, even just to get reasonable adjustments on an interview. It really puts them off.
Yeah, and I've always said, I firmly believe that as much as obviously neurodiverse people are missing out on jobs because of other people's thinking and prejudice and stereotypes, employers are also missing out on so many talented people.
They are, and a lot of the time sometimes it's even at the point of putting out a job description or using too many words,
True.
too much of a long job description and introductory materials, and the hiring platform that you do your application on is also just not inclusive as well. So you haven't even set the space up for enticing a range of people to apply as well.
I mean, absolute true story here, but the job, one of the jobs I applied for, which I ended up getting, one of the things it said is you must have experience in this particular piece of software. And I went for it because I'm very aware of job descriptions because I've done it before. I've gone for other jobs and I've never needed that. I've never been asked for that. Um, and this particular job, I found out that the piece of software that was referenced in the job description was basically they come off it about 3 months before. Um,
Oh.
so I didn't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't need it at all. But that's enough to put someone off. And,
Mm-hmm.
even neurotypical people will read that and go, no, no.
And do you know what? A higher percentage of women will also step away if they don't meet most of the criteria. As far as research has been concerned, that more women will step away from the application if they don't meet almost all of the
Wow.
criteria in comparison to men. And it's interesting through the conversations I have with people. I try and humanize the process of and bring flexibility to the thinking that we are allowed to question the job description. We're allowed to remember that a human has written this, so it's likely that there's going to be some errors as well, and that there might actually be some flexibilities as to what they will allow as well, because there is no such thing as a perfect candidate. What if you did have an initial chat with the person hiring for the role to see if it's worth your energy? Because a lot of people I work with, they suffer with mild to moderate mental health struggles, mostly anxiety and depression. Sometimes it's about, picking your battles.
Mm.
So if there's some uncertainties, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's try and pick it apart and see where you can essentially create clarity out of all of this uncertainty that they're struggling with.
And I think it's important. I think you make a good point as well, because also a lot of the people that write the job description aren't actually doing the job. You
Hmm.
know, go to HR, and HR will just have a general feel of, okay, this is what they, this is honestly a lot of HR people will literally drag one out that they did an advert on maybe 2 years ago and go, okay, yeah, we'll amend that ever so slightly. I think you've got to be in it to sort of win it, haven't you? And that's very hard for people. It's very hard for people to because people don't want to put themselves forward and then feel silly for doing it. So, but unless you put yourself in the race, you won't know.
Yeah. Well, I've learned more from the things that haven't gone the way I wanted,
Mm.
which is it's had to take a certain level of bravery and stretching of the confidence muscle to really live and learn and be able to know what works and what doesn't work, and knowing it's okay when things don't go the right way. And in interviews, there are ways to bring it back. And it's giving that understanding to these clients that it's okay to fail, and then trying to learn how to manage those feelings afterwards in a way that's acknowledging the feelings and finding something in it so that we can move forward in a helpful and meaningful way. Like, we don't want to ever minimize. Uh, we want to recognize and progress with lived experience that they've done this so they can do it again, and it certainly can work out for them. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, and fail. I think what's it? Someone deemed it to me once, first attempt in learning, right? So it is all a learning sort of experience. I still find the statistics around employment for autism, shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the national statistics are 20, I think, I can't remember what it was. I think it went up to like 29% or something of autistic people in full-time work. What would you like to see, maybe from government, or what would you like to see from employers, to make that change, to make that number better?
I'd like to see the Connect to Work initiative uh, really makes an impact with the autistic community. It'd be lovely to see how that might be able to be a supportive way into work. Um,
And what is Connect to Work for people that might not know?
so Connect to Work has been introduced as a an employment support scheme, as far as I'm aware, to help people who do have struggles to uh, in relation to finding and retaining work. And I believe you should be able to find your local Connect to Work support team through your council's website, or just by Googling local Connect to Work. There, recently, someone has let me know that there are particular milestones that one could work towards within a year to help with showing real progress into getting someone into work. Um, it is relatively new. In fact, I believe it only began properly in January. Um, where I'm from at the moment, well, where I live right now, that's when the local Connect to Work started. There's been a very big recruitment drive for it.
I think schemes like that need to happen. I
Mm-hmm.
think to get that number up, especially, hate to say it, but especially as we looks like we're heading to a reform in government, which
Mm-hmm.
is the living daylights out of me because
Mm-hmm.
they want to get rid of the things that protect, neurodivergent people, equality acts, working from home, all those things that help. So. I think we
Yeah.
sort of need the help more than ever.
Well, that's where I'm gonna plug again, Mark, with Diversita. More, well, if not more organizations that do advocacy and training and workplace training on having an inclusive work environment. If not more organizations like that, then it'd be lovely for organizations like Diversita to have more funding so that it can be uh, inputted even more so across the UK. I believe they also do work um, outside of the UK as well. That there is something really impactful about going straight to the organizations,
Yeah,
regardless of what the government is, but the organizations still need to have some training and understanding of of who they're hiring and how to support them from day one.
it's true. And, you read my mind because I was sort of deviating towards Mark as well, because I was going to ask you, obviously, we're both ambassadors for Diversita. And I just wanted to see, how did that come around for you, and what does that work it sort of entail for you? Because I know we have our sort of community meetups, and I think we've got a really nice and really good community. So, but I mean, how did that come around for you? And
I was interested in finding other work at the time, and as usual, whenever I start a job search, I find it very hard to job search with information comprehension around job descriptions, and that creating a bit more anxiety. It created a lot more procrastination and nervousness. And I was looking for, literally Googling what was out there, and Diversita popped up, and I signed up, got some one-to-one support when that was available. And when my plans changed, it's it just started to move forward with joining the Diversita Connect community forum, and I found I was able to contribute every time I was part of a conversation, and it started to snowball where contributions were being recognized as something that was quite impactful to the Diversita Connect platform itself. And it was recognized to the point of becoming ambassador for it. So it's been something that was not planned on my behalf, like with most things. it's it's materialized out of being recognized for efforts, which is something that really helps confidence wise. I don't know about you, but to be recognized for who you are and being taken for who you are is quite magical, really.
no, I think you're right, because you spend so many years, so much time of your life masking it and trying to not be that. And when someone actually sees value in you for being you,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, wow, you know, um, I completely resonate with that feeling. It does lead me on to my last question for you, which is, for people that are watching this video, and it could be employers, it could be government, it could be clients, it could be neurodivergent people. What do you hope that they get out of this? What sort of message would you like to give to those people?
I think much of my journey has been feeling like I have been alone and misunderstood. And I can't help but feel like the message should always be that you aren't alone. And sometimes it takes a bit longer to get where you need to be. It's being curious and forgiving and reminding to not just be kind to others, but to be kind to yourself and whatever you've been through, to essentially remind yourself that compassion needs to be not just given to others, but to yourself.
You want others to treat you, kind or whatever, you have to be kind to yourself.
Yeah. It enhances authenticity, and you cannot necessarily care for others if you aren't okay yourself. And it's just a lot of people that I work with, neurodiverse, neurodivergent, neurodiverse, whichever way you'd like to use the word, or not, you have to find a way to look after yourself, because you can't job search if you're not feeling well. That's why NHS Talking Therapies and employment support is there. That's why places like Diversita is there. There are some support networks to help people to feel less alone and able to show yourself the same compassion that you likely show others. I really do feel like that's the message that needs to come out, especially when there's so much going on that I think we forget to show ourselves the same kind of support.
I think it's right, and the analogy I would use is you wouldn't expect your car to get to the destination if the car isn't 100%. Your car is 20% and you're planning on a real long journey, it's probably not going to make it. So I think you're right. We need to give ourselves the grace to go, let's get ourselves to 100% before we expect to get to our destination. It's no, absolute spot on. I'd just like to say thank you, Robyn, for coming on, and it's been a pleasure to have you on this series. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to come on and collaborate. It's actually been very flattering for you to ask me to pop on.